All right, guys. Welcome to this session. I have another project here for you. This is how I delivered an AI transformation for a food and beverage company. And I'm going to be sort of going through the entire journey from receiving the actual charter mandate to, you know, initiating, planning, all the way to sort of piloting and scaling up the successes that we got from the pilot exercise and eventually to closing the project. If you're new to my channel, I would love for you to sort of subscribe. My name is Anthony. If you don't know anything about me, I'm a chartered project professional and a certified information security manager, data analyst with extensive experience in delivering projects of this nature. Worked in both the private and the public sector, and my goal is to ensure that you have understanding of what's truly happening in the market space, and hopefully by bringing you some of these projects, you have the clarity and an understanding you need. So let's not waste time. Let's just go straight into it. How I delivered an AI transformation, or I delivered AI transformation for a food and beverage company. All right, so let's start. Now, the client overview here, like I said, the client is in the sort of food and beverage sector. The client is a manufacturing firm. They've got global supply chain, wholesalers, resellers, retailers. And so you would sort of see things like logistics, routing, some of the key priorities that sort of affect their bottom line being the key areas that they wanted to sort of consider the deployment of AI and leveraging AI to sort of optimize and bring some type of efficiency and effectiveness in this domain. They've been in business for some time, doing pretty well. But the core was basically, look, how best can we leverage artificial intelligence, right? How can we sort of focus on AI to, look at transforming the business operations, and just really looking at things like, operational efficiency, effective work, and leveraging generative AI, agentic automation, looking at staff capability development, data analysis, machine learning. But we didn't have like a sort of a wide book, an open book, as it were. There were key priorities. Production was one of them, like I said, logistics, customer intelligence, engagement, and then the admin back office. And then you will sort of discuss other ones like enterprise AI and sort of the context that they operate in. This was a 12-month program. And so we'll look at the roadmap and look at some of the artifacts involved in this. So look, this is going to be a very practical session. You're going to see me bring in different tools and different, maybe not tools here in particular, but some of the deliverables that were utilized in this whole exercise. Hopefully should give you a better oversight of what it takes to sort of do a project of this nature. Okay, next slide. Now, like I said, the key priorities for us was these 5 areas: manufacturing intelligence, customer intelligence, back office automation, supply chain automation, and enterprise AI infrastructure. So these were the key areas that they had real issues, and they wanted to see how we can leverage artificial intelligence to solve or to help them achieve specific desires. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to spend more time in sort of highlighting the key problems in these areas so that you can have a better understanding of what it is that we were faced with and what we were trying to propose, and some of the sort of the deliverables and the sort of the core objectives that we had from the onset. Right, all of this is just setting the sort of the foundation, right, the context for the work that we are about to embark on. Sorry. Okay, manufacturing intelligence systems, the pain points that they were experiencing as an organization, as a manufacturing firm was, manual inefficiencies, equipment down time, inefficient scheduling. And by this, what I'm really trying to say is, the production line relied heavily on manual processes. And so that led to some type of delays and errors. You had, frequent equipment breakdowns, and this is ultimately going to have an impact on the production schedule and reduce overall efficiency. And then the current sort of scheduling system was not optimized. So these were sort of the initial solutions that we threw out there, right? Smart production line, and we're looking at some sort of, well-known tools, Siemens, Midsphere, or ChatGPT, OpenCV, Excel is still very useful in some of these things in terms of real-time quality control, predictive maintenance, Azure, IoT, or ChatGPT. So, and then of course, some sort of automation exercise. These are different kinds of solutions that we just checked out from the beginning. We haven't done our needs assessment. We haven't sort of done our requirement gathering exercise. This was just outright, oh, these are the solutions that we think would work, right? Timeline 4 to 6 months, expected ROI 100% within 12 months. And of course, the deliverable out of this was smart production line automation, real-time quality control, predictive maintenance, and production scheduling optimization. Okay, all right. So that was the first one. So we're talking here about manufacturing intelligence. Let's now look at supply chain. With supply chain, some of the issues that they were facing was, the current system struggled to, accurately predict demand, leading to overstock and stockouts. This is inefficient demand forecasting. They had delayed inventory management. So inventory updates were slow, causing delays in order to fulfill delays in order fulfillment and increased holding costs. And then you had high logistics cost, right? Inefficient routing and transportation methods were resulting in high logistic expenses. And then, of course, ineffective supplier management. Some of these solutions here we threw out there, Claude, SAP, Zoho inventory, API tools like Google Maps, Zoho, CRMs, and then, of course, your GPS-enabled open source real-time tracking systems. Now, what were the sort of key deliverables that we were expecting from this? AI demand forecasting, automated inventory management, logistics optimization, and then, of course, supplier management plus real-time tracking. Okay, now let's move to customer intelligence, right? Customer service. Some of the issues here around the pain points here, we're talking specifically around lack of response, right? The current system that they had, struggled to respond promptly to customer inquiries, and that led to dissatisfactions, and, they had limited customer insights, right? The system did not provide enough data on customer experience and behavior, making it difficult to tailor marketing strategies and see how best they can leverage their sort of data that they had. Manual order processing, a lot of this were manually done. It had its own, order processed manually. They were faced with things like delays and errors, and then difficulty predicting sort of sales, and that had, impact on things like inventory, and the list goes on. So these were sort of the initial rollout solutions that we rolled out in terms of conversations. And we hadn't, again, done our needs assessment and sort of looked at things like solution design and strategy. None of that. This is just things that we just threw out there in the first place. 2 to 3 months, expected ROI 150% within 12 months. Key deliverables, AI-powered CRM. They already had an ERP system that acted as a CRM. And so we just sort of bolted onto it, the AI capabilities to sort of help us with, producing an AI-powered CRM, and automated order processing, predictive sales analytics, digital engagement platform, et cetera, et cetera. This is one, let me see. Yeah. Okay, now let's look at enterprise AI. Enterprise was, we're looking at things like some of the pain points were inefficient data processes, high AI model development cost, lack of integration, security vulnerabilities. And so we thought about things like, cloud computing, and Azure was sort of the main focus for us. Data collection and storage, Zoho being the tool that they use was the obvious go-to. AI model development, of course, Python, Gemini, APIs, integration of middleware. Some of the tools were Zapier that we threw out there, Power Automate, and then security system and endpoint detection systems, your CrowdStrikes, and then Microsoft Defenders, etc., out there in the market space. What were the deliverables that we expected? Deliverables here, cloud platforms, data tools, middleware integration. Like I said, we chose Azure, and then AI model development with Python, and then security enhancements. We look at, we just sort of looked at the entire landscape and sort of gave recommendations on the different sort of security controls that can be implemented from different firewalls to monitoring systems, your SIMs, your XDRs, EDRs, et cetera, et cetera. Back office. Let's just quickly look at back office, right? So with back office pain points, it was high manual data entry workload, reconciliation delays, error-prone reporting. Again, some of the solutions, and we were looking at expected result was 80% less manual processes, 65% reduction in errors, and 40% faster month-end closing, right? And the deliverables, ultimately, we wanted some process automation, and we wanted to sort of work with Python scripts and reporting automation exercises that would help them in the work that they do. All right, let's just look quickly at the roadmap here. We divided this sort of, program, as it were, into three main phases. In fact, it's five, but it's really three. And you sort of see when I bring in the schedules and the Gantt charts later on. First phase was assessment and planning. And here we're looking at, conducting AI readiness assessments and sort of defining the metrics, the strategy, the KPIs, and then sort of defining also the solution, right? And then you had, the piloting exercise, which was the second phase, and deploying predictive maintenance, piloting AI-driven CRM, logistics optimization, and providing some type of training initially and getting some feedback. And then based on the feedback, we would sort of move to phase three and start to sort of scale and optimize the successful pilots, refine the workflows with analytics, and then conduct the sort of satisfaction surveys and final trainings and handover. So this was our plan. This is the plan that we initially set out to do in 2024. Let's just end this slideshow. No, I think I've got one or two things. Let me just quickly point it out here. Let's just quickly look at it. Yes. So, as you would anticipate, a lot of the work entailed quite a broad level and number of stakeholders. And so the program that we had, or I sort of put together, was weekly executive briefings, bi-weekly steering meetings, where we would sort of look at where we are, what's the focus, what are the key priorities, what are the things that we should do every 2 months, every 2 weeks. And then the daily stand-ups with the engineers and the subject matter experts to look at, where we are with progress as far as our sort of sprints, our iterations, and monthly all hands on-site change workshops. This was something that was ongoing as and when it was necessary. There's so many stakeholder participation, engagement, involvement, and constant dealing with people. As you would expect, we are affecting the processes that that people are used to on a day-to-day basis. And so the idea of not expecting resistance and people not understanding or not really engaging in change management is not something that we could have easily just thrown out. We could have ignored, put it that way. So change management was something that was necessary, and there was a constant engagement with different stakeholders at different stages for different feedback, for different reports, for different sort of understanding, so that we can make sure that we are all involved in this whole exercise. Okay, some of the challenges that we sort of identified from the onset, right? The first one being legacy integration. Typically, legacy systems are known to often struggle with integration, and they lead to some type of fragmented data and inefficiencies. And so we looked at things like using custom implementing custom APIs so that we can bridge the gap between legacy systems and then modern applications. And hopefully that the goal was to ensure seamless data flow, and that's exactly what happened. In fact, the integration allowed for real-time data exchange, and so that we were able to sort of improve overall efficiency and decision making of the systems that they used. Staff resistance, typical, right? Change. Nobody likes change. And the key was explaining, helping people understand, training them, bringing them on board, carrying them, having that employee engagement and participation and involvement and commitment to the success. So having champions and key figures within the team that ultimately had some leverage and in terms of influence, and working with pretty much everyone, taking everybody along in the whole process was sort of very, very, very critical. This is why, as we continue to train, we saw, right, higher satisfaction rate, with 85% of all the staff feeling confident and comfortable with the new sort of systems that we were bringing in. And then data quality. Typically, a lot of the work that you would do as far as AI and data analysis, machine learning, require data that is clean, that is quality, garbage in, garbage out, right? So we needed some cleaning protocols, right? Because poor data quality ultimately, as we know, leads to inaccurate insights and decision, right? So implementing robust data cleaning protocols was very key and instrumental to ensure that the data we're working with was accurate and reliable. So these are some of the core challenges that we're faced with from the beginning. The projected expected results were simple. The client wanted cost to reduce by 20%, efficiency to improve by 30%, and then customer satisfaction to increase by 60%, and productivity to boost by 25 to 40%, and then of course ROI 150 to 180. Success metrics here. Again, manufacturing downtime to reduce 35%, scheduling to go up 42%, supply chain 35%, forecast accuracy, forecast accuracy should go up by 35%, and then inventory cost should reduce by 28%, and then of course customer satisfaction 45%. So very clear understanding of the landscape, of the expectations, of the KPIs, of the metrics. We were sure. But in terms of the actual output, there was a need to follow a process to ensure that ultimately some of these key metrics and the KPIs and the expectations can and will be achieved. So how did we do this, right? How did I deliver on these things? All right, let's look at our next slide, roadmap. Okay, let's just look at it here. All right, cool. Now, in my mind, and I probably need to sort of explain to you, I have a process that we were working with, right? There's a process that it was quite sort of obvious to the team, and I want to walk you through what this process was so that you can have a better understanding of what we are doing here. We divided this activity, or I divided this activity or this project into three main phases, right? The first phase was the assessment and planning phase. The second phase was the pilot program phase. And then the third phase was scaling and optimization. What exactly did we do at, the assessment phase? Assessment phase, we had the discovery and foundation. This is where the initiation exercise came in, change readiness assessment, AI readiness assessment, just really sort of testing the ground to see if we had the capacity, the requirements to actually embark on this AI transformation exercise. And then, of course, some requirement gathering exercise, requirement analysis exercise, requirement sort of transformation came in. So putting together, some needs analysis workshop. Like I said at the beginning, we threw out just initial solutions, They were not the finalized solutions. I'll sort of show you some things in a minute, but ultimately, the needs analysis workshop was very critical in helping us to understand what the real needs were contextually, right? And then that was sort of foundational to sort of building the right solutions and planning how we were going to implement these solutions. And then, of course, if you think about the project agreement, because your business requirements documents, your PIDs, your requirement documents are sort of well defined, the scopes are well agreed, and so we needed agreement on that. And I'll show you some of the documentations in a minute, but let's just go through this. Second phase, once we were clear about what the expectation was, what the boundaries were, what the scopes, what the cost, what the time frames, what all the sort of required key foundational pillars being there, we moved to the piloting phase, right? The piloting phase was really about sort of beginning the pilot of some of these things, looking at predictive maintenance, pilot, customer relationship management, making sure we're building the sort of the initial pilot and test, and then logistics optimization, building the initial pilot. And then based off the sort of the responses and the information that we gathered, of course, these were refined and so gave us the impetus to now go to the third stage, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we also focused on staff training, right? Just general AI awareness, general sort of idea of what this whole thing is about, because we would subsequently train them on how to use the system that we've built. But we began to sort of, wet the ground, as it were, to provide them with an initial understanding of what it is that they were beginning to embrace. Then, of course, third phase was scaling and optimization. This is where successful pilots were scaled, right? Workflow refinement exercise based on analytics. Then capability maturization. So comprehensive training was provided. We looked at training some champions that were going to ultimately provide subsequent training, overall training of some of the things that we've sort of implemented, and then performance monitoring and optimization. And then we began to sort of implement evaluation and feedback systems in such a way that we would be able to attain employee satisfaction and then review and possibly hand over. Two work streams that sort of worked in parallel, and I'll explain that in a second, with all of these phases where the enterprise AI infrastructure, and then the back office automation. And it will make sense in a second, because what we realized that was this could start on its own. There were no sort of clear dependencies on any of these areas. And likewise, the back office operations, we were very clear about the what you call it here, the scope, and there were no clear dependencies that we had with any of these other sort of work streams that we were focusing on. This was the roadmap, right? The work started in Jan 2024, with a focus of completing in December 2024, right? Key areas, I've sort of pointed out a few things. Jan to March, we sort of had key milestones to finish at each interval. So by March, we were looking to sort of finish a lot of these different initial activities. June, the same. July, we had some of the sort of other things to sort of finish. And then November, we began to sort of scale and complete with our handovers and finalize what we were doing. So if you look at it, phase one completion end by March, pilot June, mid-June, infrastructure foundation establishment end of June, and then you have the project handover end of November, December. And you would sort of see the key areas: delivery, project initiation and planning, AI readiness assessment, solution design, piloting exercise later on, operations the same, needs assessment workshop. At the same time, like I said, we began to sort of build the sort of cloud computing architecture setup, Azure, with Azure, and then also the back office processes and, your process maps and sort of initial gathering of requirements and sort of putting things together. And we sort of went along at each individual stage. Later on, when I show the Gantt chart, you sort of see that there are different issues, right? There are different issues, the different risks, the different sort of things that, we had to deal with at different intervals. And so it was sort of necessary for us to work collectively as a team, collaboratively, and also be very, very reactive to some of these things. And I think that sort of the approach, right? Although this looks like a very linear pattern, I kid you not, this was very, very, very agile in nature. We focused on what we had at the time. We built it, and we had specialist team dealing with specific things at the right times, so that we wouldn't have that quote unquote scope creep exercise, and we wouldn't, we're trying to build something within an institution, and this is early 2024. AI is still fairly new, so a lot of the things are beginning to sort of they need time to make sense. Okay, now let's look at the project schedule, right? This is the project schedule that we had. Like I said, there are really 3 stages, but if you see here, you've got 5, and the reason is because, like I said, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 started at the same time as enterprise AI infrastructure and then back office operations. Started 8th of Jan for phase 1, and we started enterprise AI infrastructure at the same time, around the same period, right? And you would sort of readily see that, the durations are subject to as what we're doing, subject to the complexities, subject to what was being attended to at the time. These are by no means like I think it's better I show you in a second, right? These are just the headers, right? Let's just go and look at the Gantt chart. All right, let me just end slideshow and let's just go and look at the Gantt charts now. Right. So probably better if we look at it on Microsoft projects. Yes. So these are the key phases, like I said, right? And then of course, this is the work breakdown structure. Let me just refresh it so that we can see this. All right. I'm just probably going to show you the grid first, and you begin to sort of see the key areas. I've sort of removed who it was assigned to. But generally, there's quite a substantive amount of work. So you've got the initiation kickoff that entailed the project kickoff meetings, stakeholder identification and analysis, establishment of communication channels. Then you had the readiness assessment and what that entailed, the needs workshop, production department workshop, supply chain, sales and customer workshop. And we followed up with different things like surveys. We followed up with brainstorming exercise and interviews, one-on-ones, whatever. It just depended on what it is that was necessary. And we'll look at some of the design, solution design, defining specific AI solutions for the key pain points, right, based on the needs assessments that we've had. Select appropriate AI tools, right? Define. So this is really going into detail, and then let's just look at it here. Yes, let me just use this because this is necessary. I've had to take quite a lot of things off. Yeah, so you have your Gantt charts, and you can sort of see the direction in which things are quite sequential, but at the same time you have 2 independent stuff starting at the same time, right? So you have your right, enterprise is starting at the same time as your back office, right? If we go back here, enterprise started at the same time as the back office. And that's the point. The point is we kind of realized from the onset that certain things didn't have to work at the same time, right? We could ultimately go and work out what we are doing as is needed. Okay, so this is it, right? And this exercise of requirement gathering, of the initial sort of assessment and planning led to the production of what I would call the implementation report. And the implementation report really helped us to sort of define what we're doing at each individual stage. So, for example, the first stage that I showed you, phase one assessment planning, those specific time frames, and the focus really was, to understand, right? To understand the organization's current state, identifying key opportunities for AI implementation and developing a comprehensive plan for transformation. What was the outcome? Well, the outcome was successful completion of assessment and planning, resulting in clear understanding of the project scope and objectives and a detailed implementation plan, right? This is the plan that eventually we put together. And then you had, again, phase two here, different things that are being done. Of course, you can sort of see the key deliverables. Let me go back here. You can see the deliverables here: project charter, stakeholder identification, assessment report for maturity assessment reports, technology gap analysis, prioritize use cases, business requirement document. I'll show you the business requirement document in a second, and then some of the designs we'll go and sort of see it. So look, at every stage, we're very clear on what needed to be done, right? This phase involved executing several pilot programs. This is when we move to stage two, right? To test the feasibility and effectiveness of selected AI applications in a controlled environment, right? And the outcome was successful execution and evaluation of pilot programs, and that provided us with valuable insight into the performance and impact of selected AI applications, right? Same with scaling. When we got to scaling, that's what we did, right? We were very clear on what it is that we're trying to achieve. Some of these deliverables, we kind of knew what the deliverables were on the onset, and then provided some notes. Again, the exercise provided with a successful scaling of pilot programs, resulting in tangible benefits across the organization. Continuous monitoring and optimization ensured the ongoing effectiveness of the implemented AI solution. And then, of course, like I said, these ones were overlapping, right? Enterprise AI infrastructure overlapping at the same time, or sort of these were the key work streams that were sort of going in pari passu with the first one. Back office was also going with the first one here. So look, this was our implementation plan. We're very clear on what it is the deliverables were, who was going to do what. There's a much more detailed document with resource planning. I don't want to sort of show it here because of obvious reasons. Okay, so this was our implementation plan. Some information here. But let me go and show you the requirement document. I think I've got the requirement document. The requirement document, please bear with me, it's a 62-page document, clearly defining, the project overview, the key stakeholders, in terms of even communication and involvement levels, requirement gathering process, how much time. So it was a very well detailed requirement document, looking at, and some of these designs, we'll look at the designs in a second, integration layer, architecture, processing layer, all of these, I'm going to show you in a second what they were, but a very well detailed document that showed us, even risks. We captured some key risks, risk plan for phase three, phase two, for different phases. That's what it is, right? It's a requirement document. What do we need? What do we require in order to be able to deliver on this? And some of the key deliverables for each individual stage, which we've sort of touched on already in our implementation plan. But you sort of see that it's not just this is what we want to do, this is what we want to do, but these are the sort of the risks that are posed, or these are the risks that we need to sort of understand and put mitigation strategies in place for. So this is a very long document with different kinds of appendices and stuff. So it's quite an elaborated document here. But let's just return back now to what we're looking at, which is this bad boy here. I'm going to go back to sharing swap. All right. So we've looked at this. This was a schedule, and then the Gantt chart. This was sort of the Gantt chart that we had. Um, and now what I want to do is sort of, move into the bit where I show you some of the designs and quickly sort of touch on them so that you can sort of see what the focus is where. Again, this is an extensive exercise with, design experts, system design experts, and as architects, AI design architects, software engineering experts, subject matter experts, consultants. By no means, I didn't put together some of these things that I'm about to show to you, but the point was ultimately to sort of help you to know what it is that was necessary in the whole sort of package, as it were, to build what we built. Okay, so this is the first part, right? And this is really about the solutions architecture. You've got four main layers here: the data layer, the processing layer, integration layer, the presentation layer, and really just looking at how the entire architecture, right, worked, right? So from data sources all the way to the model development, API integration, to how it was presented at the presentation layer. And then the next one is the system integration architecture. Here we're talking about how the different applications, your ERP system, manufacturing, supply chain, all of them sort of integrated into one ecosystem via the integration layer, and then data storage. The next one here is the data flow diagram. Here, just showing how, information or data flowed from one end to another. You've got the application, user applications, the middleware, AI processing, data storage, right? And then, of course, ETL processes that were necessary to extract, transform, and load. Another thing that was very important, this whole thing was data governance, right? How we were going to ensure that we had a framework in place to, govern, data and AI, right? And so data management framework, from your data quality management, metadata management, data security and privacy, looking at data lifecycle, and then governance structure that was necessary, right? Implementation phases, and then, of course, eventually the sort of specific governance, as it were. I also have the change management framework. Like I said, this is something that ultimately required and involved change, right? You can't do any kind of implementation work and not expect resistance and not expect some type of friction. And so having an idea of sort of the phases, as it were, ADCAR's change management framework that showed the phases of change and how people embrace change. Is initially some type of an awareness, it's a desire, we build knowledge, ability, and then reinforcement. And that's where we got to our scaling part, really. This is where we were scaling, as it were, and looking at the scaling exercise. Let me just get my laser part. Yes, so scaling was critical, right? This is the reinforcement part, and this is where we focused on our piloting exercise, and this is where the assessment part was important. I'm going to show you some designs as well. The dashboard, right? This is just an overall general dashboard that we had, designed. I don't think we ever, I probably can't speak on this now, but this was the initial sort of dashboard design. And then you had your risks, your key risk. We knew that integration complexity, like I said, legacy systems, data quality issues, user resistance, insufficient skills, a business case not realized, process disruptions, system performance, and vendor issues. And we sort of identify these risks in terms of their likelihood, their impact, their probability, and came up with different mitigation and sort of looked at even their levels of mitigation approach in terms of what required immediate action, active monitoring needed. Of course, the KPIs and the metrics, we understood that ultimately that's going to be something that required active monitoring in that sense. Now, so this is initiation planning, and now we moved into execution, right? So I'm going to talk about execution here, but remember our planning involved, our schedule, our work breakdown structure, our Gantt charts, resourcing, everything that is necessary here, you know, that's done. Initiation is done. Piloting is done. We're very clear on what it is that we want to do. Okay, now let's begin to sort of, in fact, I'm going to show you piloting now, right? Let me not go ahead of myself, but I want to quickly just show you some piloting code and then some outputs, and then we can begin to wrap up here. So I've got VS Code here, right? Let's go back here to our presentation and look at the areas of focus that we had for piloting. Yes, so with piloting here, if you remember, I talked briefly about the fact that we focused on predictive maintenance pilot, AI-driven CRM, and then logistics optimization. And the goal is very simple. We wanted to test, right, what works and what didn't work. So, this is some of the code that we had. Not that if you're not technical enough, it's not something that you're going to really care about. But the point was, ultimately, let me say this, that a lot of this work is not just code. It's also an amalgamation of code, strategic thinking, experts solving different problems. And then we use the different tools, AI automation, algorithm, code, Python, to basically help us to, predictive maintenance system, right? And yeah, it's a very long-winded process that the technical people will understand. But for your purposes here, let's just go back here and look at some of the outputs here. So okay, so first one is this. This is the dashboard for the predictive maintenance exercise, right? So we're looking at maintenance of the equipment, and so it will make more sense. We ultimately needed a dashboard to help us understand, the current state of things as far as the maintenance of the equipment is concerned. What it is, what could we use to detect potential failures? And so you had, some of these things were highlighted, and then there's some element of scoring that was critical in the algorithm to be able to detect whether or not an equipment, needed maintenance. And you've got things like vibration, temperature, vibration mean, days since maintenance, runtime hours. And then, of course, this is the equipment alerts dashboard, imminent failure risks, what's the percentage, the time, detected, predicted, failure. This is dashboard I could pick up here. And then, yeah, just helping them to be able to understand what it is. And this was linked to the maintenance schedule, right? The maintenance schedule here. Again, just helping them to see what needed attention, what didn't really need attention, and putting together something. Okay, let's just go to the logistics one. Logistics one, again, is all about, planning properly, ensuring that we have enough at each interval. Again, a dashboard, logistics was about inventory optimization, route planning, demand forecasting, warehouse allocation settings, et cetera, and looking at what it is that we were working on. And then finally, sort of the forecasting exercise that was done. So let's go back here. Now, let me say this. So we started out by simply saying that this is an AI transformation exercise. And when it comes to AI, we're looking at different kinds of solutions for different problems, right? And there is really no right solution for AI, right? AI one of the things you realize with AI solutions, particularly on organizational transformation exercises, is that you have different bolt-on, applications and solutions that you add to the sort of infrastructure that they currently have. It doesn't necessarily, AI doesn't work on its own. It has to be bolt-on. I mean, unless you're bringing your co-pilots, your chat GPTs, which are ecosystems in themselves, the rest is just going to be additions to what you have, right? There's a bit of data analysis in this whole procedure, definitely predictive work, machine learning, um, and then you're looking at different solutions, packages for different areas. But the point was very simple. We understand what is necessary, we test it out, and then eventually we roll it out and scale. So once we got feedback from the various things, we began to sort of roll it out at large and sort of saw some changes in the things that we were doing. So that's it, really. Initiation, planning, execution. We monitored that, addressed some issues on a day-to-day basis, ensured that dependencies were achieved. Some issues popped up, risks were mitigated, meeting here, training there, doing this. Once all of that was done, we looked at, scaling. And here, capability training, staff training was very, very necessary. And then the handover phase was crucial in helping us to close the project whilst ensuring that we have performance optimization. And this exercise, must say, required heavy, involvement with, change managers, champions, super users, as it were, and leadership backing, because you're changing the way things are done, and people are not necessarily always comfortable with new changes, even though it's going to be beneficial for them. So thank you very much, guys. I hope this was useful to you. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.